The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday evening, the kind of rain that makes you grip the steering wheel a little tighter and lean forward to see through the windshield. Derek had just left his daughter's school, and his heart was still warm from watching her perform in the spring play. She'd played a talking flower, and even though she forgot one of her lines, she'd improvised something about sunshine that made the whole audience laugh. That was his girl. Always quick on her feet. He was heading home on the winding mountain road, the same route he took every day after work. Derek worked construction, had been doing it for 12 years now. His hands were rough and calloused, his back ached most mornings, but it was honest work and it paid the bills. Well, most of them anyway. Being a single dad wasn't easy, especially on a construction worker's salary. But he and his 8-year-old daughter made it work. They had each other, and that was enough. The radio was playing some old rock song when he saw it. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him through the rain. The hillside to his right seemed to be moving, like the whole mountain was sliding down. Then he heard it. A sound like thunder, but deeper, more terrifying. A massive boulder, probably the size of a small truck, broke free from the slope and came crashing down onto the road. Derek slammed on his brakes, his truck skidding slightly on the wet pavement. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The boulder had smashed directly onto a car, a fancy black sedan that had been maybe 50 feet ahead of him. If he'd been driving just a bit faster, if he'd left the school 2 minutes earlier, that could have been him. For a second, he just sat there, frozen. The rain hammered on his roof, and the wipers kept going back and forth. Then he saw movement in the crushed car. Someone was in there. Someone was alive. Derek didn't think. He just moved. He threw his truck into park, grabbed his emergency toolkit from the back seat, the one he always carried because of his job, and ran out into the rain. The water soaked through his jacket in seconds, but he didn't care. Someone needed help. The scene was worse up close. The boulder had crushed the roof of the car on the driver's side, and the whole vehicle was pinned against the metal guardrail. Rocks and mud were still sliding down the hillside. This whole area could come down any second, but Derek pushed that thought away. He had to focus. He got down on his knees in the mud and looked through the passenger window. A woman was inside, probably in her early 40s, wearing an expensive-looking business suit. Blood was running down the side of her face from a cut on her forehead, and her eyes were unfocused, dazed. She was trying to say something, but he couldn't hear her through the glass. Derek tried the passenger door. Locked. He ran around to the driver's side, but that was completely crushed. The boulder had caved in that entire side of the car. He went back to the passenger side and tried the door again, pulling as hard as he could. Nothing. The whole frame of the car was bent from the impact. He looked in at the woman again. Her eyes met his, and he could see the fear there. She was going into shock, he could tell. Her lips were turning pale, and she was starting to shake. He had to get her out, and he had to do it fast. Derek ran back to his truck and grabbed a crowbar from his toolbox. His hands were shaking as he wedged it into the gap between the passenger door and the frame. He'd done this kind of thing before at work, forcing open stuck doors on renovation sites, but never with someone's life depending on it. Never with a hillside that could bury them both at any moment. He put all his weight into it, leveraging the crowbar, pulling and prying. The metal groaned and bent. Come on, he thought, come on. The rain made everything slippery, and his hands kept sliding off the crowbar. He adjusted his grip and tried again. The woman inside was watching him now. Her eyes were more focused. Like seeing him fight to get her out was bringing her back from wherever she'd gone in her mind. She was trying to push the door from her side, using whatever strength she had left. Minutes felt like hours. Derek's arms burned from the effort, and his shoulders screamed at him to stop. But he kept going. Pry, pull, reset, pry again. The door was giving way inch by inch. Finally, with a sound like a small explosion, the door popped open. Derek dropped the crowbar and reached in. The woman was trapped by her seatbelt, which had locked tight from the impact. He pulled out his knife, the one he used for cutting rope and materials at work, and carefully cut through the belt. She fell forward into his arms, and he had to brace himself to keep from falling backward into the mud. "I've got you," he said, his voice hoarse from breathing hard. "I've got you. You're okay now." She was lighter than he expected, but dead weight is always heavy. He lifted her out of the car as carefully as he could, trying not to jostle her too much in case she had injuries he couldn't see. The rain was still pouring down, and more rocks were starting to slide down the hillside. They needed to move. He carried her away from the car, away from the unstable slope, and set her down gently on the other side of the road. She was conscious, but barely. Her eyes kept closing and then opening again like she was fighting to stay awake. The cut on her head was bleeding pretty badly, and he could see bruises forming on her arms. Derek pulled off his jacket and put it under her head, then took off his flannel shirt and pressed it against the cut on her forehead. He was down to just his t-shirt now, and the rain was cold, but he didn't feel it. All his focus was on this woman, this stranger he'd just pulled from what could have been her grave. "Stay with me," he said, leaning close so she could hear him over the rain.
Help is coming.
"Just stay with me." Her hand came up and gripped his arm. Her grip was weak, but it was there. She was trying to say something, her lips moving. He leaned even closer. "Please," she whispered, so quiet he almost didn't hear it. "Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere," Derek promised. "I'm right here." He pulled out his phone with his free hand, keeping the other one pressed against her wound, and called emergency services. His hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped the phone twice. He gave them the location, told them about the landslide, about the woman's injuries. They said ambulance and fire trucks were on the way, maybe 10 minutes out. 10 minutes felt like forever. Derek kept talking to her, keeping her awake. He told her about his daughter's play, about the talking flower, about how she'd forgotten her line but made everyone laugh. He didn't know why he was telling her all this, but it seemed to help. She kept her eyes on his face, kept holding onto his arm. When the ambulance finally arrived, lights flashing red and blue through the rain, Derek felt relief wash over him. The paramedics rushed over with their equipment, asking him questions, checking her vitals. They were efficient and professional, and Derek stepped back to give them room to work. One of the paramedics looked up at him. "You did good, man, real good. You might have saved her life." They loaded her onto a stretcher, putting a neck brace on her and starting an IV. As they wheeled her toward the ambulance, she reached out her hand, searching. Derek stepped forward and took it. "Please," she said again, her voice stronger now, but still afraid. "Don't leave." The paramedic looked at Derek. "You family?" "No, I pulled her out." "She wants you there," the paramedic said with a shrug. "You can ride with us if you want." Derek looked back at his truck, sitting there with the door still open, then at the woman on the stretcher. She was looking at him with eyes that pleaded with him not to leave her alone. He made his decision in a heartbeat. "Yeah," he said. "I'll come." He climbed into the back of the ambulance and they took off, sirens wailing. He held her hand the whole way to the hospital. This stranger who he'd just risked his life for, and somehow it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her. But for those 20 minutes in the rain, fighting to save her life, she'd been the most important person in his world. And judging by the way she kept holding onto his hand, refusing to let go even as the paramedics worked around them, maybe he'd been important to her too. Maybe in that moment of terror and pain he'd been exactly what she needed. Someone who wouldn't give up. Someone who wouldn't leave. The hospital lights were bright as they wheeled her in, and doctors and nurses swarmed around the stretcher. Someone gently pried her hand from his, and she disappeared through a set of double doors. Derek stood there in the emergency room, soaking wet, covered in mud and blood, still shaking from adrenaline. A nurse came over and put a blanket around his shoulders. "You should sit down," she said kindly. "You've been through a trauma too." Derek nodded and sat in one of the waiting room chairs. His daughter. He needed to call someone to check on his daughter. His neighbor was watching her, but he needed to let them know he'd be late. He pulled out his phone and made the call, his voice sounding strange and far away to his own ears. As he sat there, wrapped in a hospital blanket, Derek realized something. He'd left his truck on the side of the mountain road, probably blocking traffic. He'd left his tools scattered in the mud. He was supposed to be home making dinner for his daughter. His whole evening had been completely derailed, but he'd saved someone's life. And somehow, looking at his muddy hands still shaking slightly, he knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. 3 days had passed since the accident, and Derek was back at work hammering nails into a frame for a new house addition. His crew kept asking him about what happened, having heard about it through the local news. The story had made headlines: "Local man saves executive in dramatic mountain rescue." Derek didn't like the attention. He'd just done what anyone would do, or at least what he hoped anyone would do. His arm still ached from prying open that car door, and every time he closed his eyes, He could see that woman's face through the rain-streaked window, the fear in her eyes. He wondered how she was doing. The hospital had told him she was stable when he'd called the next day, but that was all they could share. Privacy laws and all that. So when his phone rang during lunch break and he saw an unknown number, he almost didn't answer. Probably a spam call. But something made him swipe to accept. "Hello, is this Derek?" A professional-sounding woman's voice came through. "Yeah, that's me. My name is Patricia. I'm calling on behalf of Victoria Chen. You saved her life 3 days ago on Mountain Pass Road." Derek sat up straighter, nearly dropping his sandwich. "Is she okay? Is she doing all right?" "She's doing much better, thanks to you." Patricia's voice warmed up a bit. "She's been asking about you. She'd very much like to see you, if you're willing to visit her at the hospital. She's being discharged tomorrow, but she wanted to thank you properly before she leaves." Derek looked down at his work clothes, covered in sawdust and paint stains. I'm just glad she's okay. She doesn't need to thank me." "She'd really appreciate it," Patricia insisted gently. "Would today work?" "Visiting hours are until 8. Derek thought about his daughter waiting at home, but something in him wanted to know that the woman was really okay. Wanted to see with his own eyes that she'd made it through. "Yeah, okay. I can come by after work." "Around 6? "Perfect. She's in room 412. And Derek? She said you could bring your daughter if you'd like. She remembers you talking about her." That surprised him. She'd been barely conscious fighting shock and injury, but she'd remembered him talking about his daughter. Derek felt something tighten in his chest. "Okay, yeah, maybe I will. Thanks for calling." He hung up and stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he called his neighbor and asked if she could watch his daughter for a bit longer. Or actually, never mind. Maybe his daughter should come with him. That evening, Derek and his daughter walked through the hospital corridors. His daughter was wearing her favorite purple dress and carrying a drawing she'd made of a rainbow and some flowers. "Is the lady nice?" she asked, holding his hand tight. "I don't really know her, baby," Derek admitted. "But yeah, I think she is." Room 412 was at the end of the hall. Derek knocked softly, and a voice called out for them to come in. He pushed open the door, and there she was. Victoria Chen looked a lot different than she had 3 days ago. She was sitting up in bed, her dark hair pulled back and a large bandage covered part of her forehead. Bruises decorated her arms, and she moved carefully like her body still hurt. But her eyes were clear and alert, and when she saw Derek, her whole face lit up. "You came," she said, and her voice cracked a little with emotion. "Of course," Derek said, feeling awkward suddenly. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." Victoria's eyes moved to his daughter, and she smiled. "And you must be the famous actress I heard so much about." "The talking flower?" His daughter giggled and hid behind Derek's leg for a moment, then stepped forward. "I made this for you," she said, holding out her drawing. Victoria took it with hands that trembled slightly, and Derek could see tears forming in her eyes. "This is beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to keep this forever." Derek pulled up a chair and sat down, his daughter climbing into his lap. The room was nice, private, with flowers on every surface. Get well cards lined the windowsill. "How are you feeling?" Derek asked. "Sore. Bruised. Lucky to be alive." Victoria set the drawing carefully on her bedside table where she could see it. "The doctors said if you hadn't gotten me out when you did with the blood loss and the shock, I might not have made it. Or the hillside could have come down completely and buried the car." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what needed doing." "Most people wouldn't have," Victoria said quietly. "Most people would have called for help and waited. You risked your life for a complete stranger." They sat in silence for a moment. Derek's daughter was looking at all the flowers, counting them under her breath. "I wanted to do something for you," Victoria continued. "To thank you properly." She reached for an envelope on the table beside her and held it out. "Please, let me do this." Derek didn't take it. He could tell by the thickness of the envelope what it was. A check, probably a big one. "I appreciate it, but I can't take that." "Derek, really I can't." He met her eyes. "I didn't do it for money. I did it because you needed help. Anyone decent would have done the same." Victoria lowered the envelope slowly. For a second, she looked like she might cry. "Not everyone is decent," she said softly. "I'm learning that more and more." Something in her voice made Derek pause. There was a loneliness there, something deeper than just physical pain from the accident. He recognized it because he'd felt it himself plenty of times over the past 3 years. "Well," he said, trying to lighten the mood, "I'm just glad you're okay. That's enough for me." Victoria studied him for a long moment. "Then at least let me take you and your daughter to dinner once I'm out of here." "A thank you dinner? That's not charity, that's just gratitude between people." Derek was about to refuse again, but his daughter perked up. "Can we go to the place with the good mac and cheese?" Victoria laughed, and it was a real laugh, the kind that made her wince a little from her bruised ribs. "Absolutely. The best mac and cheese in town. It's a deal." Derek found himself smiling. "Okay, dinner, we can do that," and that's how it started. What should have been a one-time thank you dinner turned into something neither of them expected. 2 weeks later, they met at a family restaurant downtown. Victoria showed up in casual clothes, jeans, and a sweater, looking more relaxed than Derek would have imagined. The stitches on her forehead were out now, leaving a thin red line that would probably fade to a small scar. Dinner was easy, comfortable. Victoria asked his daughter about school, about her favorite subjects, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. His daughter talked her ear off about art class and her best friend, and how she wanted to be a veterinarian or maybe an astronaut. She hadn't decided yet. "Those are both excellent choices," Victoria said seriously. "The world needs more people who want to explore and heal." Derek watched them interact and felt something warm in his chest. His daughter hadn't had many women in her life since her mother left. His sister visited when she could, but she lived 3 hours away. Seeing his daughter laugh and chat with Victoria, it reminded him of what they'd been missing. After dinner, as they walked to their cars, Victoria turned to Derek. "This might sound strange, but I had a really good time tonight. I don't get to do normal things like this very often." "What do you mean, normal things?" Derek asked. Victoria gestured around at the parking lot, the restaurant, the ordinary Tuesday evening. "This casual dinner talking about nothing important, just being a person instead of a CEO." "You're a CEO?" Derek blinked. That explained the expensive car, the nice hospital room, the assistant who'd called him. "Of a tech company, yeah." Victoria smiled ruefully. "Does that change things?" "Should it?" Derek asked honestly. "It usually does." Victoria looked down at her feet. "People either want something from me or they're intimidated by me. It's refreshing to talk to someone who just sees me as a person." They stood there in the parking lot as his daughter ran ahead to look at a dog someone was walking. "Same time next week?" Victoria asked, and there was something almost hopeful in her voice. "If you're not too busy." Derek thought about his schedule. Work, pick up his daughter, make dinner, help with homework, repeat. Nothing that couldn't be adjusted. And honestly, he'd had a good time too. "Yeah, okay. Same time next week." That became their routine. Coffee on Saturdays at the diner near Derek's house. A museum visit where Victoria taught his daughter about abstract art. A hike on a surprisingly warm autumn day where they all got muddy and laughed about it. Derek learned that Victoria had been married once, years ago, but her ex-husband couldn't handle her ambition and long hours. They'd divorced without kids, and she'd thrown herself even harder into her work. She'd built her company from the ground up, starting with just an idea and a laptop in her studio apartment. "I wanted to prove I could do it," she told Derek one afternoon as they sat on a bench watching his daughter play on the swings. "I came from nothing. My parents worked factory jobs their whole lives. I was going to be different. I was going to build something that mattered." "And you did," Derek pointed out. "Yeah." Victoria's smile was sad, but somewhere along the way I forgot to build a life too. Just a company. And now I have this success that everyone envies, and I go home to an empty penthouse every night. Derek understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. "It's hard doing it alone," he said quietly. "Being a single parent, I mean. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water, but then my daughter does something silly or she gives me a hug and I remember why I..." The announcement came on a Tuesday afternoon, right when Derek was picking up his daughter from school. She came running out to his truck with tears streaming down her face, and his heart immediately dropped to his stomach. Something must have happened. Was she hurt? Did someone hurt her? "Baby, what's wrong?" He knelt down to her level, checking her over for injuries. "They're canceling art class," she sobbed, throwing her arms around his neck. "Mrs. Peterson told us today. No more art. They don't have enough money, so they're getting rid of it." Derek felt relief wash over him that she wasn't hurt, followed immediately by disappointment. Art was his daughter's favorite class. It was the 1 hour of the school day she actually looked forward to. She wasn't great at math, struggled a bit with reading, but in art class she shined. Her teacher had even told him at the last parent conference that his daughter had real talent, that she should keep developing it. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said, hugging her tight. "I know how much you love that class. Can't you talk to them?" she asked, pulling back to look at him with those hopeful eyes that broke his heart. "Can't you tell them they have to keep it?" Derek thought about his bank account, the stack of bills on his kitchen counter, the way he was already stretching every dollar to cover rent, food, utilities, and his truck payment. The school needed money for the art program, money he simply didn't have. Even if he picked up extra shifts, worked weekends, it wouldn't be nearly enough. "I'll see what I can do," he said, knowing it was probably a lie but unable to crush her hope completely. "Come on, let's go home." That night, after his daughter finally cried herself to sleep, Derek sat at his kitchen table with his head in his hands. He felt like a failure. What kind of father couldn't even keep his kid's art class going? He knew it wasn't his fault, knew the school's budget wasn't his responsibility, but that didn't make him feel any better. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Coffee tomorrow? I have something exciting to tell you." Derek typed back a quick yes, then set his phone down and went to bed, though sleep was a long time coming. The next morning at the diner, Victoria was practically glowing. She ordered her usual coffee and waited until Derek had his before launching into her news. "I wanted to tell you in person," she said, her eyes bright. "My company just closed a major deal. We've been negotiating for months and it finally came through. This is going to change everything." "That's great," Derek said, and he meant it. He tried to sound enthusiastic, but something in his voice must have been off. Victoria's smile faded. "What's wrong?" Derek shook his head. "Nothing. Really, I'm happy for you." "Derek." Victoria's voice was firm now. "We're friends. Talk to me," so he did. He told her about his daughter's art class, about the school's budget cuts, about feeling powerless to help his own kid. Victoria listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious. "How much does the school need?" she asked when he finished. Derek felt his stomach tighten. He hadn't told her this to ask for money. "It doesn't matter. They made their decision." "Derek, how much?" he sighed. $20,000 for the year. It covers the teacher's salary, supplies, everything." Victoria pulled out her phone. Derek watched her fingers fly across the screen, typing quickly. "What are you doing?" "Making a donation," she said simply. "No." Derek's voice came out harder than he meant it to. "No, Victoria, you can't do that." She looked up at him, confused. "Why not?" "I have the money. The kids need the program. It's simple." "It's charity," Derek said. "I don't want your charity." "It's not charity, It is." Derek stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. A few people in the diner looked over. He lowered his voice. "I told you that as a friend, not as a way to get money out of you." Victoria's eyes flashed. "I know that. That's not why I'm doing it." "Then why are you doing it?" Derek demanded. "To make yourself feel good? To prove you can swoop in and fix things with your money?" "No!" Victoria stood up too now. "I'm doing it because I care about your daughter. Because art programs matter. Because maybe I can actually use my money for something good instead of just watching it sit in a bank account." "We don't need your pity," Derek said. "It's not pity." Victoria's voice rose to spite herself. "God, Derek, why is it so hard for you to accept help?" "Because I need to be able to provide for my daughter myself," Derek shot back. "I'm her father. It's my job." "And you're doing a great job," Victoria said, her voice softening a bit. "But you can't do everything." "Nobody can. There's no shame in accepting help sometimes." "From someone I barely know." Derek regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth. Victoria looked like he'd slapped her. She sat back down slowly. "Is that what you think? That we barely know each other?" Derek sat down too, suddenly exhausted. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean that." "We've been spending time together for 2 months," Victoria said quietly. "I've told you things I've never told anyone. About my marriage, about my childhood, about how lonely I am. I thought we were becoming real friends." "We are," Derek said. "That's why this is so hard. I don't want money to ruin that." They sat in silence for a long moment. The diner buzzed with other people's conversations around them. Ordinary people having ordinary mornings, not having complicated arguments about money and friendship and pride. What if I made it anonymous? Victoria finally said. The donation, I mean. The school wouldn't know it came from me. You wouldn't have to feel like you owed me anything. Derek shook his head. You already sent it, didn't you? Before I even said anything, Victoria bit her lip. I was in the process, yes. Cancel it, Derek said. Please. Derek, Victoria, please. This is important to me. She looked at him for a long moment, then picked up her phone again. Her fingers moved across the screen, and then she turned it to show him. Transaction canceled. Okay, she said. It's canceled. Thank you, Derek said. They finished their coffee in uncomfortable silence. When they left the diner, they said goodbye in the parking lot without making plans for next week. For the first time since they'd started hanging out, neither of them suggested getting together again. Derek drove home feeling hollow. He'd done the right thing, hadn't he? He'd stood up for himself, maintained his pride, set boundaries. So why did it feel so awful? A week passed. Victoria didn't text. Derek didn't text either. He told himself it was for the best. Their worlds were too different. It had been naive to think they could really be friends, his daughter noticed. Why doesn't Miss Victoria come around anymore? She asked one evening at dinner. She's busy with work, Derek said. Did you have a fight? Kids were too perceptive sometimes. Sort of, Derek admitted. But it's grown-up stuff. Don't worry about it. His daughter pushed her food around her plate. I miss her. I know, baby. I do too, and he did. He missed Victoria's texts. He missed their coffee dates. He missed having someone to talk to who got it, who understood what it was like to feel alone even in a crowd. At work, Derek was distracted. He hammered his thumb twice in one day, something he hadn't done in years. Tony pulled him aside during break. You okay, man? You seem off. Just tired, Derek said. This about that CEO lady? Tony asked. I heard you two had some kind of falling out. Derek's head snapped up. How did you hear that? Tony shrugged. Small town, man. People talk. My cousin's kid goes to your daughter's school. Apparently some big anonymous donation came through to save the art program, and people are speculating it was your rich friend. Derek felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. What? Yeah, 20 grand, showed up out of nowhere. School board accepted it yesterday. Art class is saved. Tony grinned. Pretty convenient timing, right? Derek couldn't breathe. She'd done it anyway. She'd said she canceled it, but she'd done it anyway. He finished work in a daze, picked up his daughter, and drove home on autopilot. His daughter was thrilled about art class being saved, chattering about the project Mrs. Peterson was planning for next week. Derek smiled and nodded, but inside his emotions were a mess. He was angry that Victoria had gone behind his back, grateful that his daughter's class was saved, ashamed that he'd needed help, confused about why Victoria had lied to him, and underneath it all, he missed his friend. That night, after his daughter was in bed, Derek sat on his front porch with a beer he wasn't really drinking. His phone was in his hand, Victoria's number pulled up. He must have started typing a message 20 times, then deleted it. Finally, he just called. She answered on the third ring. Derek? You lied to me, he said. Silence on the other end. Then, I know. You said you canceled the donation. I canceled that donation, Victoria said carefully. And then I made a different one. Through a different account. Truly anonymous this time. The school will never know it was me. But I know, Derek said. Yes, you know. More silence. Derek watched a car drive past, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Why? He finally asked. Because it wasn't about you, Victoria said, and her voice was firm now, not apologetic. I know you think it was, but it wasn't. It was about your daughter and every other kid in that school who deserves to have access to art. It was about a community that needed help. Yes, I care about your daughter because I care about you. But even if I'd never met you, if I'd just heard about a school cutting arts funding, I would have done the same thing. You should have told me, Derek said. You would have said no, that's 2 months had passed since the art class incident, and Derek and Victoria had settled into a comfortable rhythm. They met for coffee every Saturday, texted throughout the week, and occasionally got together with his daughter for dinner or weekend activities. Derek was getting better at accepting the friendship for what it was, though he still felt a twinge of discomfort whenever Victoria insisted on paying for meals. It was a rainy Thursday evening when Victoria called him. Not texted, but actually called, which was unusual for their weekday communication. Derek was helping his daughter with homework at the kitchen table when his phone rang. "Hey," he answered, holding up a finger to his daughter to pause on her math problem. "Are you free to talk?" Victoria's voice sounded different. Nervous maybe, excited. "Yeah, give me a second." Derek walked into the living room. "What's up?" "You okay?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." Victoria took a breath. "I have something I want to run by you." "A proposition?" Derek felt his guard going up automatically. "What kind of proposition?" "A job offer," Victoria said quickly. "Hear me out before you say no, okay? Just listen to the whole thing." "Okay," Derek said slowly, sitting down on his couch. "My company is launching a new initiative. We want to create a community development program that trains underprivileged youth in trade skills. Construction, electrical work, plumbing, all of it. The goal is to give kids who might not go to college a real pathway to good careers, to break cycles of poverty by teaching practical, valuable skills." "That sounds great," Derek said, wondering where this was going. "I want you to run it," Victoria said. Derek laughed. He couldn't help it. "You want me to what?" "I want you to head the program, design the curriculum, oversee the training, hire instructors, work with the kids. You'd be building something from the ground up." "Victoria, I'm a construction worker. I don't have a college degree. I don't have management experience. You have 12 years of construction experience," Victoria interrupted. "You have hands-on knowledge of multiple trades. You're a natural teacher. I've seen you explain things to your daughter. You understand what it's like to struggle, to work hard for everything you have. You know the value of these skills because they've provided for your family. That's worth more than any business degree." Derek shook his head even though she couldn't see him. "This is crazy. You can't just offer me a job running a whole program." "Why not?" "It's my company. I can hire whoever I want, but I'm not qualified." "Says who?" Victoria's voice had an edge to it now. "Who gets to decide what qualifies someone for something?" "Derek, I've spent the past few months getting to know you. I've seen how you think, how you problem solve, how you care about doing things right. I've seen your work ethic. You're one of the most qualified people I know for this job." "What would it even pay?" Derek asked, then immediately felt stupid for asking. He was supposed to be turning this down, not negotiating. Victoria named a number that made Derek's heart stop. It was nearly triple his current salary. With that kind of money, he could actually save for his daughter's college. He could fix the leak in his roof. He could buy her new clothes instead of shopping at thrift stores. He could breathe. "That's too much," he said. "It's the market rate for a program director," Victoria countered. "Actually, it's a little below market rate, but we're a startup initiative." Derek stood up and started pacing. His mind was racing. This was too good to be true. There had to be a catch. "Why me, really? You could hire someone with experience, someone with credentials." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Can I be completely honest with you?" "Please." "That day of the accident when you pulled me out of that car, something changed for me." Victoria's voice grew softer. "I'd spent so long in boardrooms with people who had every credential in the world, but no real understanding of what life is like for most people. They can talk about community development and breaking poverty cycles, but they've never lived it. They don't know what it's like to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. They've never had to explain to their kid why they can't afford the field trip." Derek felt something tighten in his throat. "You have," Victoria continued. "You've lived it. You're still living it. And more than that, you've never let it make you bitter or selfish. You risked your life for a stranger. You work yourself to the bone for your daughter. You have integrity and compassion and everything we need for this program to actually matter. Skills can be taught. Heart can't be." Derek sat back down on the couch heavily. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Victoria said. "That's all I'm asking. Don't say no right now. Sleep on it. Think about what you could do with this opportunity. Think about the kids you could help." "This feels like charity again," Derek said quietly. "It's not." Victoria's voice was firm. "I'm not offering you this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because you're the right person for the job. If you don't believe me, I'll send you the full program proposal. Look at what we're trying to do and tell me honestly if you don't think you could do it. And if I say no, then I'll find someone else and we'll stay friends and nothing changes between us," Victoria said. "But Derek, I really hope you don't say no. I think you could change lives with this, including your own." After they hung up, Derek sat in the living room for a long time. His daughter eventually came to find him, her math homework finished, asking if they could watch a movie. He agreed absently, letting her pick something while his mind churned. That night, after his daughter was asleep, Victoria emailed him the full proposal for the program. Derek stayed up until 2 in the morning reading every page. The vision was incredible. They wanted to partner with local high schools to identify students who were at risk of dropping out, or who weren't on a college track, offer them paid apprenticeships in various trades, connect them with union jobs after completion, provide mentorship and support. It was exactly the kind of program Derek wished had existed when he was 18 and didn't know what to do with his life. He'd stumbled into construction by accident, taking whatever job he could find. What if he'd had real training? Real support? How different might his path have been, and he could provide that for other kids now. He could be the person who helped them find their way. But could he actually do it? Run a whole program? Work with Victoria's company? Leave behind the familiar world of construction sites and physical labor for something that involved meetings and planning and things he'd never done before? Derek barely slept that night. The next day at work, he was distracted again. Tony noticed immediately. "All right, what is it now?" Tony asked during lunch break. "You've been weird all morning." Derek hesitated, then figured he might as well talk to someone about it. He told Tony about the job offer, watching his friend's expression carefully. Tony was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed and shook his head. "Man, you've got to be the only person I know who'd even hesitate about that. Triple your salary? Actually making a difference instead of just hammering nails all day. What's there to think about?" "I don't have the qualifications," Derek said. "So? Learn them. You think everyone who runs programs like that came out of the womb knowing how? They learned. You can learn." Tony clapped him on the shoulder. "Derek, you're one of the smartest guys I know. You pick up new skills faster than anyone on this crew. You can read blueprints like you're reading a kid's book. You're always the one explaining things to the new guys. You're already a teacher, you just don't realize it. But working for Victoria's company, doesn't that feel weird?" "Why would it?" Tony asked. "You think she's offering you this because you're friends?" "Nah, man. Rich people don't get rich by making bad business decisions. She's offering you this because she thinks you can do it. And honestly, I think you can too." Derek thought about that for the rest of the day. That evening, he did something he rarely did. He called his sister. Rachel lived 3 hours away with her husband and 2 kids. She and Derek had always been close, but they didn't talk as often as they should. When he told her about the job offer, she squealed so loud he had to hold the phone away from his ear. "Derek, oh my God, this is amazing." "You think I should take it?" he asked. "Are you kidding?" "Yes. This is a life-changing opportunity." "What's holding you back?" He explained his concerns. The qualifications he lacked. The fear of failing. The worry about what people would think. His sister listened patiently, then said something that hit him hard. "You know what Mom would say if she were here?" Rachel said softly. Their mother had passed away 5 years ago from cancer. "She'd say you deserve good things. You've been punishing yourself ever since Michelle left, like you think you failed somehow. You've been working yourself into the ground trying to prove you're enough. But Derek, you've always been enough. It's time you believe that." Derek felt tears prickling his eyes. "I'm scared I'll mess it up. So what if you do?" Rachel said. "So what if you try and it doesn't work out? At least you tried. At least you didn't let fear keep you in the same place forever. Derek, you pulled a woman out of a crushed car. You raised a beautiful, smart, kind daughter on your own. You're stronger than you think you are. It's time to start acting like it." That night, Derek made his decision. He called Victoria. "I'll do it," he said when she answered. "I'll take." Derek had been in his new role for 3 weeks, and things were going better than he'd expected. He'd hired 2 experienced instructors, secured partnerships with 3 local high schools, and was in the process of setting up the training facility. The work was challenging, but in a different way than construction had been. His muscles didn't ache at the end of the day, but his brain was exhausted from all the planning and problem-solving. It was late on a Friday evening, and most of the office had cleared out. Derek was finishing up some paperwork when he heard a knock on his doorframe. He looked up to see Victoria standing there looking tired. The past few weeks, he'd seen her mostly in professional settings and meetings about the program. They'd barely had time for their usual coffee dates or casual conversations. "Hey," she said. "You got a minute?" "Sure, come in." Derek gestured to the chair across from his desk. "What's up?" Victoria came in and closed the door behind her, which was unusual. She sat down and was quiet for a moment, just looking at her hands. Derek felt concern growing in his chest. Something was wrong. You okay? He asked gently. Victoria looked up at him and he was shocked to see tears in her eyes. I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Derek felt his heart start to pound. Okay, I'm listening. Victoria took a shaky breath like she was steeling herself for something difficult. That day of the accident, the day you saved my life, I need you to know the whole truth about that day. What do you mean? Derek asked. I told you I was driving home from work, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. That was a lie. I wasn't going home. Derek waited, giving her space to continue. I was going to the Morrison Bridge, Victoria continued. You know the one out on Highway 47. It's high, isolated, beautiful views. She paused. I'd been driving there every night for 2 weeks, just sitting in my car, looking at the water below, trying to work up the courage. Derek felt his blood run cold. Victoria, I had letters written, she said, tears starting to stream down her face. One to my board of directors. One to my parents. One to the few friends I had left, though I'm not sure they really counted as friends anymore. Everything was planned. I just couldn't pull the trigger, literally or figuratively. Every night I'd sit there, and every night I'd eventually drive home instead. Derek's hands were gripping the arms of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. He couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was telling him. That night I decided it was finally time, Victoria said. I couldn't keep living the way I was living. I'd built this empire that everyone envied, but I felt nothing. Completely hollow. I'd wake up in my penthouse apartment, go to my corner office, make decisions that affected hundreds of people's jobs, and feel absolutely nothing. I was a robot going through motions. Why didn't you tell me? Derek finally managed to ask. Because I was ashamed, Victoria said simply. Because I have everything anyone could want, and I still wanted to die. How do you admit that to people? How do you tell them that success and money and power mean nothing if you have no one to share it with? No purpose beyond profit margins. Derek stood up and came around the desk, pulling up the other chair to sit directly across from her, close enough to hold her hands. What happened that night? Victoria gripped his hands like they were a lifeline. When that boulder hit my car, my first thought wasn't fear. It was relief. The choice had been made for me. I wouldn't have to do it myself. I could just let go. She sobbed, her whole body shaking. But then you appeared at my window. Derek felt tears running down his own face now. You fought for 20 minutes to get me out of that car, Victoria continued. 20 minutes of pure determination to save someone you didn't even know. And when you finally got me out, when you were holding me in the rain, you started talking to me, telling me about your daughter's play, about her terrible jokes, about how she makes you pancakes every Sunday, even though they're always burned. Victoria laughed through her tears. You were covered in mud and blood, and you were telling me about pancakes. And something in me woke up, something that had been asleep for so long I'd forgotten it existed. You reminded me what it meant to be human, what it meant to have someone care if you lived or died. I didn't know, Derek said softly. I had no idea. How could you? Victoria said. I was good at hiding it. Everyone thought I had it all together. The successful CEO, the self-made millionaire, the woman who broke through every barrier. No one knew I was dying inside. They sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands, both crying. In the ambulance, you kept talking. Victoria said, You told me about your wife leaving, about being a single dad, about how hard it was, but how your daughter made everything worth it. You were so honest, so real. I hadn't had a real conversation with anyone in years. Everyone who talked to me wanted something. But you just wanted to make sure I was okay. I'm so sorry you were going through that, Derek said. I wish I'd known. I wish I could have helped sooner. But you did help, Victoria insisted. Derek, you saved my life that night, but not just from the accident. You saved me from myself. And then over the past few months, you've kept saving me. Every coffee date, every conversation, every time you brought your daughter to hang out. You showed me what it means to actually live, not just exist. Derek shook his head. I didn't do anything special. I just was myself. Exactly, Victoria said. You were yourself. Authentic, kind, struggling, but never giving up. You showed me that success isn't measured in stock prices or board meetings. It's measured in moments. In 8-year-olds who paint terrible watercolors. In men who work 2 jobs but never miss a school play. In second chances we don't think we deserve. She squeezed his hands tighter. These past few months with you and your daughter, I've laughed more, lived more. Felt more than I have in 10 years. I wake up in the morning and actually want to get out of bed because I'm curious what the day will bring. I check my phone hoping for one of your daughter's random animal facts. I look forward to coffee on Saturdays. I look forward to it too, Derek said quietly. You gave me a reason to want to live again, Victoria said. You reminded me that life can be beautiful and messy and complicated and wonderful all at once. That it's okay to struggle, that it's okay to need people, that connection matters more than any amount of money in the bank. Derek pulled her into a hug and they both cried. All the emotions of the past few months came pouring out. The fear, the gratitude, the friendship, the healing they'd both been doing without really realizing it. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria wiped her eyes and laughed a little. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to dump all of this on you at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Don't apologize, Derek said firmly. I'm glad you told me. I just wish you hadn't carried this alone for so long. I'm not carrying it alone anymore, Victoria said. That's what I wanted you to understand. You and your daughter, you've become my family, the family I chose, and I needed you to know the whole truth about what you mean to me. Derek felt something shift in his chest. For months, he'd been so focused on not being a burden, on not taking advantage of Victoria's friendship, on maintaining his pride and independence, but he'd missed the bigger picture. Victoria needed him just as much as he needed her. This friendship wasn't one-sided. They'd saved each other in different ways. I've been an idiot, Derek said suddenly. Victoria looked confused. What? All this time I've been so worried about taking from you, Derek explained. About being charity or owing you something. But I never stopped to think about what I was giving you. You weren't helping me out of pity. You were helping me because it made you feel connected, feel human, feel like you mattered. You're not an idiot, Victoria said with a small smile. You were protecting yourself. After your wife left, after everything you've been through, of course you'd be defensive. Of course you'd struggle to trust. But Derek, you can trust me, and I can trust you. That's what this is, Derek nodded slowly. I've been so focused on what I couldn't provide, what I didn't have, that I forgot about what I could give. Friendship, support, a reminder that there's more to life than work and success. Exactly, Victoria said. You've given me so much more than you realize. You've given me hope. You've given me a reason to build this program, to use my resources for good instead of just accumulating more. You've given me a family. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, Derek could see the city lights twinkling in the darkness. You know what changed for me? Derek said. Taking this job. Not because of the money, though that's life-changing, but because you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You saw potential in me that I couldn't see, and slowly I'm starting to see it too. Good, Victoria said, because it's been there all along. You just needed someone to point it out. I've spent 3 years thinking I wasn't enough, Derek admitted. Not enough to make my wife stay. Not enough to give my daughter everything she deserves. Not enough to matter. But you made me realize that I've been measuring myself by the wrong standards. You've always been enough, Victoria said. Your wife leaving, that was about her, not you. Your daughter is happy and healthy and loved, which is everything that matters. And you matter because of who you are as a person, not what you can provide. Dare,